Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं नमो विष्णुपादाय श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so thank you all for joining. So today we'll continue our discussion on Canto 11, continuing from chapter number 25. So Krishna has been describing about the Gyanas to Sri Uddhava, and in this chapter we'll see again in previous chapter we have seen how Krishna described about the Sankhya Yoga, the philosophy, by analytical study how we can know, and at the end Krishna says that by understanding these things, one can remain above all this, and he is well situated in my lotus feet. So that's the main purpose, that we should be focusing on the lotus feet of Lord Hari. And Krishna says that everything emanates from myself, and everything at the end annihilate into my body only. So that's how Krishna gives the knowledge of creation as well as annihilation. And we'll discuss again in 12th canto about more on how annihilation happens. And chapter 25 comes here. It says the three modes of nature and beyond. So the three modes and beyond this, as we know about the three modes like goodness, passion, ignorance, and there is something which is called as beyond these three modes, that is pure goodness or Suddha Sattva. So Krishna is going to describe in this chapter well here. So Krishna describes us more about how this living entity, they attains a particular nature or the body by associating with this individual material modes. And Krishna says in the first couple of verses, it gives the qualities of mode of passion, mode of ignorance, and mode of goodness. Let's see. Krishna says the mind and sense control, tolerance, discrimination, sticking to one's prescribed duty, truthfulness, mercy, careful study of the past and future, satisfaction in any condition, generosity, renunciation of sense gratification, faith in the spiritual master, being embraced at improper action, charity, simplicity, humbleness, and satisfaction within oneself. These are the qualities of mode of goodness. Material desire, great endeavor, audacity, dissatisfaction even in gain, false pride, praying for material advancement, considering oneself different and better than others, sense gratification, rash eagerness to fight, a fondness for hearing oneself praised, the tendency to ridicule others, advertising one's own prowess, and justifying one's action by one's strength. These are the qualities of mode of passion. Intolerant anger, stinginess, speaking without scriptural authority, violent hatred, living as a parasite, hypocrisy, chronic fatigue, quarrel, lamentation, delusion, unhappiness, depression, sleeping too much, false expectation, fear, laziness. These are the qualities of mode of ignorance. So Krishna describes what the quality of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Krishna says, now please hear about that how these three modes they combine with each other. And these three modes actually exist within every living entity. So we can't say that okay, this person is only in mode of goodness or mode of passion or mode of ignorance. All the three qualities are there. Yeah, depending upon this nature, how he interacts with these three modes, one become prominent, another are subdued or not so prominent. And Krishna says that the transcendental, the transactions of this world, they are based on the combination of these modes. And qualities such as self-control is understood to be predominantly in mode of goodness, and a passionate person is recognized by his lust, and one in ignorance is recognized by the qualities of such as anger. And person worshipping me with loving devotion offers prescribed duties without material attachment unto me is called as mode of goodness. So now describe Krishna about duties. So duties, uh, gi- giving up our offering our results to Krishna's lotus feet, to Krishna without any material attachment is called as mode of goodness. And Krishna says the people who worship me by practicing uh, prescribed duties with the hope of gaining material benefit, that worship is called as mode of passion. So first mode of goodness, worship is with devotion and giving up, offering his duties results to Krishna without having any desire. And in the same way, worshipping Lord with the desire to gain material benefit is in mode of passion. And who worship me with desire to commit violence against other is in mode of ignorance. So you can see that worshipping Lord can also be counted in three different ways or three different modes: mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Krishna says the three modes, it always influence the living entity, but Krishna or the Lord is never influenced by these three modes. And then Krishna describes the qualities of person with respect to modes. What happens? The qualities when the person is in mode of goodness, which is very luminous and pure and auspicious, it predominates over passion and ignorance. A man becomes endowed with happiness, virtue, knowledge, and other good qualities. So these three modes, and when this mode of goodness becomes predominant or it dominates over the other two, then a person becomes happy, virtuous, knowledgeable, and with good other qualities. And at the same time, when this mode of passion is dominate over goodness and ignorance, that causes attachment and other activities, and it conquers ignorance and goodness. And a man begins to work hard to acquire prestige and fortune. So that's a mode of passion. When we want to become famous, we want to earn more money, hard work, and others, it comes over there because it's all hard work to acquire prestige and fortune. And in this mode of passion, a person has experiences so much anxiety and struggle. And when the mode of ignorance conquer this passion and goodness, it covers one consciousness and makes one foolish and dull. And hence, falling into a lamentation and illusion, a person in the mode of ignorance sleeps excessively, indulges in false hopes, and displays violence towards others. So these are the quality of mode of passion, mode of ignorance for a person, the qualities. And how this mode predominates, Krishna says, when the consciousness becomes clear and the senses are detached from matter, one experiences fearlessness within the material body and detachment from the material mind. And this is the time one has the opportunity to realize God. So when someone is completely in mode of goodness, who has no any fear from this metal world, metal body, and completely detached, that becomes a good stepping stone or an opportunity to realize Lord. And distortion of intelligence due to too much activity, unsteady of mind, that comes as mode of passion. And basically when the mode of passion uh, dominates the other two, the activities of becomes person become unsteady, and he's unsteady in his mind, and his intelligence is distorted, and he works so hard. And when ignorance becomes predominant, there is no concentration, mind is ruined, and it manifests ignorance as well as depression. So this is a mode of ignorance. Now Krishna says about the mode of goodness. How can we get strength? So strength of mode of goodness increases when we associate or when we do activities of in the mode of goodness. And when a mode of passion is strong or it dominates, it becomes sorry when a mode of goodness is predominate, the strength of demigods, it increases. And when the mode of passion dominates or increases, the strength of demons becomes strong. And when mode of ignorance become predominant, then wicked increases. And in mode of goodness, someone goes to at death, he goes to higher planet. And in mode of goodness, in mode of goodness he goes to higher planet. And mode of passion, he remains in this human body or in the material planet. And in mode of ignorance, he goes to lower planet or lower spaces. Now Krishna says about work, how this work can differentiate between mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. So work performed towards Lord and without consideration of fruits. So work can be performed, and we can give up the fruits towards Lord without considering its fruits. That is mode of goodness. And when work is performed to enjoy our sense gratification, for sense gratification, it's a mode of passion. And when work is done for violence and envy, that becomes mode of ignorance. And then Krishna says about knowledge. So knowledge of what knowledge? Pure goodness in mode of goodness, the knowledge about this living entity jiva and the body, or the understanding of this who is living entity and what is body, that is mode of goodness. And in duality, it's mode of passion, like still, yeah, I'm on this world and I need to work and everything. It's mode of passion. And the foolish materialistic knowledge is called as mode of ignorance. So and then Krishna explained higher than this. From this, he says knowledge based on Supreme Lord, understanding about Supreme Lord, glorifying him, this is the transcendental knowledge. And Krishna says about residence now. So the forest is the residence for mode of goodness, the town is the residence for mode of passion, and gambling places is the residence for mode of ignorance. And wherever Lord reside, that place is always in pure goodness or Suddha Sattva. And Krishna next says about a performer. So a performer who is in mode of goodness, he is free from attachment. And when someone, a performer worker, is in mode of ignorance, he has a lot of personal desire. And when ignorance is prominent in the person or the worker, he doesn't know what is right and what is wrong. And when a person has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Hari, that work is called as pure goodness or Shuddha Sattva. And then Krishna says about faith. What is faith in more three modes? So spiritual life is faith. So like having spiritual life is in faith in goodness. Faith in the mode of goodness is called as spiritual life. So believing in gods, worshipping them, and this is spiritual life. And faith in mode of passion is fruitive work. And then faith in mode of ignorance becomes irreligious activity. And faith in pure goodness is devotional service. So devotional service for Supreme Lord is the faith in mode of pure goodness. And Krishna says about the food. The food is basically wholesome and pure food are mode of goodness. And the food which gives immediate pleasure is mode of passion. And food in unclean and which causes distress are mode of ignorance. And food that is offered to Lord Hari, Lord Krishna, it is being said as in pure goodness. So the things which are in pure goodness, it never binds us. But other things, even things in pure goodness also, sorry, in mode of goodness, that's binds us as well. And Krishna says about next happiness. So happiness derived within self from self is called as mode of goodness. Happiness derived from the sense gratification is in mode of passion, and happiness derived from delusion and degradation is in mode of ignorance. And happiness derived from Lord, which is transcendental, that is in mode of pure goodness. So Krishna says, and concludingly says, therefore, material substance, place, result of activity, time, knowledge, work, the performer of work, faith, state of consciousness, species of life, destination after death are all based on these three modes of material nature. And now question comes like, how can someone cross these three modes? Now Krishna says that all these different phases of conditional life arise from work born of the modes of material nature. The living entity who conquers these modes and which manifest from the mind can dedicate himself to me by the process of devotional service, and thus he can attain pure love of, love of me. So basically, to conquer these three modes can be done through practicing the process of devotional service. And then he says, therefore, Krishna speak again about this rarity of this human birth. He says, therefore, having achieved this form of human life, which allows one to develop full knowledge, those who are intelligent should free themselves from all contamination of modes of nature, and engage exclusively in loving service to me. So Krishna very nicely says, Tashmat deham imam labdha. So by achieving this human form of life, one should do what? Bhajantu. He would start engaging himself in the loving service of Supreme Lord. And that's how, and he should conquer this mode of passion and ignorance by engaging himself only with the things which are in mode of goodness. So if someone is in mode of, some when we see that passion is dominating or nothing dominating, then we should try to conquer those and try to live on the mode of goodness. And when living in the mode of goodness, we can actually, that's become the stepping stone towards pure goodness. So thus, fixed in the pure devotional service, the sages should also conquer the material mode of goodness. So Krishna is saying that wherever we are, we should try to come to the place of mode of goodness. And once we have achieved the mode of goodness, we should try to worship Supreme Lord with love and devotion. And then gradually, by this loving devotional service, we can conquer this mode of goodness as well. And hence, we can cross these three modes. Right. And then uh, Krishna concludes this chapter saying that freed from subtle uh, conditioning of the mind and from the modes of nature, born of material consciousness, the living entity becomes completely satisfied by experiencing my transcendental form. And he no longer searches for enjoyment in the external energy, nor does he contemplate or remember such enjoyment within himself. So at the end, Krishna concluded say that no, the purpose is, or the ultimate goal is to conquer this the three modes, conquer the mind, and uh, engage in devotional service, by which actually someone can experience Krishna's transcendental form. So by doing service to Krishna, we can experience his transcendental form, and hence there is no more need for searching for other enjoyments from external energy. Someone can actually enjoy within himself by just remembering Krishna's pastimes. By remembering Krishna's, he can enjoy, or he can get the uh, what we say as transcendental pleasure, right? Or the highest pleasure in this world. And that's how it concludes chapter 25. And in chapter 26, Krishna again continues the same thing with another example. He gives, and this is called as Aila-gītā. So here Krishna narrates another context that how even a highly elevated person can get degraded with the association. Like the unfavorable association is a threat to one's position in devotional service, and how by associating with saintly person one can attain the highest platform of devotion. So this being described here. So Krishna says about he says human form of life or human form of life is actually is very rare, and it gives the opportunity to realize God. So this is the pathway by which we can understand and realize Krishna. We know in physics we know there's a word called as escape velocity. So escape velocity is what by which this velocity which actually we can pierce this and go to space, right? So that's basically human form of life is escape velocity to actually cross this whole material cosmos and go back to spiritual world. And that's why we have discussed earlier that how even the devatas they desire to come in this human form of life, because from here it's very becomes easily to go to the spiritual world. So Krishna narrates here that uh, she says be in devotional service, and one can achieve Lord. And Lord is actually he is a reservoir of all pleasure. So whatever the pleasure we are trying to gain, and he is a reservoir. So if you go to reservoir, there is no there is, there's a plenty of water there. In a similar way, if you go to the someone who has a reservoir of all pleasure, then we can seek pleasure from him. It's like if you go to a king, and definitely king has so many things, and he can fulfill all of your desire if you ask. But a beggar, he asks just for some money, right? And we've seen how in the Bali Maharaj past time, and Lord Vamandev came and he says, okay, just I want 3 steps of land. And then Bali Maharaj says, to whom are you asking? I'm the king of 3 planets, right? So you can ask whatever you want. Why they're just asking for 3 foot? And you can ask that, ask me something that for the next time you don't have to ask anything from anyone. Ask something like that. But that's Krishna's plan. He said, no, I am willing just for 3 steps. So that's how Krishna is having full or reservoir of all pleasure. So if we seek shelter at his lotus feet, we will actually get this pleasure which is flowing from his lotus feet, right? So, and Lord here he wants that one should not, or one should try to avoid association with the materialistic people and who are more dedicated towards sense gratification only. So this if one wants to go towards this spiritual life, spiritual path, towards the kingdom of Lord Hari, toward the service of Lord, and there are do's and don'ts. So these are the kind of don'ts. Krishna says that someone should check, he should guard himself from the association of materialistic people. And he says because the association of materialistic people, it makes one fall down into the deepest pit of darkness. So it actually because of only because of sense gratification, trying to enjoy sense gratification, we are actually taking birth after birth and birth after birth. So that's why Krishna warns here. And he says it's like uh it's a blind man following another blind man. So definitely these 2 blind men, they won't go anywhere else. But there is nice explanation given, like even a blind man, if he takes shelter of help of a person who has eyesight very well, they can cross the road very easily. But if he try by his own self, he might get an accident or put in some other condition. So that's why Krishna warns that association of materialistic people should be avoided as much as possible, and association of the devotees should be gained as much as possible. So Krishna here narrates a story of Aila. Aila, you remember we discussed in 9th chapter, and his name is Pururava as well, King Maharaj Pururava. And I'll just give you a background. So Ela, Ela was Sudhumna. We discussed about this. Ela becoming he's a son of Manu. He becoming for some time a male and also female. So Sudhumna in Ela, and Buddha Buddha was again son of Tara, which is wife of Brihaspati, but wife of Brihaspati was being kidnapped by moon god, and the son came from them is called as Buddha. So Buddha and Ila, they unite, and they had a son called as Pururava. And we discussed in Canto 9 that Pururava, somehow he was so much attracted toward Urvashi. So Krishna narrating that past time now again. So what happened to at the end, what Pururava thought and what he came to conclusion. So that's being described here in this chapter. So King Krishna says that there was the King Aila or King Pururava. He sung a very famous song, and that is well known as Song of Aila or Aila-gītā. And he says when he derived of his wife Urvasi, he was at first bewildered, but by controlling his lamentation, he began to feel detachment. And when she was leaving, he ran after uh, her like a madman. And although Pururava enjoyed for a long time, for many years with Urvashi, still his mind was attracted towards Urvashi. And then Krishna starts saying that. So Pururava once, we know that what the condition was, like whenever Urvashi would see Pururava and in naked form, she would go back to his uh, planet, I mean planets. So he says that see the extent of my delusion. So now is being said of Pururava. He's saying that see the extent of my delusion. My heart was so polluted by lust that I had no idea how my life was passing, and I could not even see the rising and setting of sun. Many years I have passed in vain. And although I am supposed to be a mighty emperor, a crown jewel of all kings on this earth, just see how my bewilderment has rendered me a toy animal in the hands of a woman. So though I am king, but I am still hankering towards this woman, Urvashi. And he says, although I was a powerful lord, because he was a great king, and with great opulence I had, but still she gave up. She gave up to me as if I am an insignificant blade of grass. Though I am powerful, I am opulent, but this Urvashi has given me up as if I am just a blade of grass. That is very, very insignificant, isn't it? And he says, like an ash being kicked in the face by his sea ash. So I ran after that woman who had already given me up, and I still am trying to enjoy with her. And what the use of high education, austerities, renunciation, studies of religious scriptures if one's mind is stolen by a woman? So that's being said by uh, Pururava here. He's saying very nicely, Kim Vidya, Kim Tapasha, Kim Tyagena, Shrutena Va. So, what is the use of this big education, the practice of austerities, renunciation, and what is the use of studying religious scriptures and living in a secular place in solitude and silence if all that one's mind is stolen by a woman? And he's saying uh, to himself that I am such a fool that I did not even know what was good for me, and lusty desire kept rising again and again even though I stayed with her for many many years. So this is the material lust, material desire. Whatever we fulfill, the desire becomes more and more. That's the material thing, right? And it's explained here very nicely that like like a fire that can never extinguished by the oblations of ghee poured into its flame. So if there's a fire and if we start pouring on ghee, it actually goes more and more. And now he's saying that only Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, can possibly save my consciousness. So my consciousness is completely polluted now, and may Lord save my consciousness. And as also we discussed earlier that the Brahmana, he says, I do not blame to anyone. And now he also says the same thing, that I cannot blame anyone else for my trouble. The only thing I can blame is myself as I am very ignorant of my real spiritual identity. And I did not control my senses. I am like a person who mistakenly sees a harmless rope as a snake. And now he says that this body, whom this body belongs to, very, very important verse, who this body belongs to, one can never decide whose property this body actually is. So, does it belong to one's parent who has given birth to it, or to one's wife who gives his pleasure, or is to the emperor who orders the body is around, or who's being, taken care by these orders of emperor or employer, whose body is neither parents nor the wife nor the employer? Is it the property of the funeral fire, or of the dogs and jackals who may ultimately devour it? So means here, due to different practice of religious, the body can be buried, the body can be thrown, and the body can be, burned. So depending upon that, the point made is that the body is a property of whom? Is it for the funeral fire, or the dogs or jackals? And is it the property of indwelling soul who partakes in its happiness and distress, or does the body belongs to intimate friends who encourage and help it? Although a man never definitely ascertains the property of the body, he becomes most attached to it. So we do not know who this body belongs to, but a person becomes attached to it. The material body is polluted by the material form, heading towards a lowly destination. And yet, when a man stares at one's face of a woman, he thinks, what a good looking lady, what a charming nose she got, and sees her beautiful smile. So there is no difference between the ordinary. Again he continues the same thing uh, in a more elaborate way, the distinction that there is no difference between an ordinary worms and a person who try to enjoy this metal body, which is composed of different things like, skin, flesh, blood, muscle, marrow, bone, stool, urine, etc. And therefore, one should never let his senses uncontrolled. He should try to control his senses. And even this saying very nicely that even those who are highly learned, they cannot trust the six enemies of this mind. So the mind is, what are six enemies here? Saying that, what to speak then of the foolish person like me. So the senses are very, very difficult to control, and when it's left go, even highly learned personality, they fails to control the senses. And thus, Lord Krishna continuously, by describing, says this King Pururava, though he went to the planet of Urvashi to associate with her, and then his consciousness being purified by the transcendental knowledge, he understood the real nature. He contemplated on these things, and then he gave up the position, or give up the association of Urvashi, and he understood me, or Krishna, as the supreme soul within his heart. And so at last he achieved peace. And an intelligent person, Krishna says there, an intelligent person should therefore reject all bad association, and instead take up the association of a saintly devotees, whose words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. So that's how the chapter begin, like the association of bad and association of good. So association of bad, where we see the materialistic and who are engaged more on the sense gratification, that actually is unintelligent. And taking the association of saintly devotees, by which the attachment can be cut down. And Krishna, after that, he says, this pastime, whoever hears and chant and respectfully takes to heart these topics about me, about Lord Krishna, he becomes faithfully dedicated to me and thus achieves my devotional service. And nothing remains to achieve after achieving devotional service unto Lord. So devotional service is kind of, we say, charam shima, that the most achievable thing, or the final thing, you can say. Yes, however, in devotional service there is more and more, That's again unlimited. However, that's something transcendental. Yesterday Prabhupada was saying that about this competition between this gopis and Krishna, right? He says that whenever Krishna gopis sees Krishna, the gopis become happy, and when Krishna sees that gopis are happy, Krishna becomes happy. So at the same time, when the gopis says, okay, our Krishna has become more happy, the gopi becomes more happier. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita described that the pleasure what the gopis they derived by seeing Krishna, it's actually 10 million times more than the pleasure what Krishna derived by seeing gopis. So imagine, that's how it increases, and that's why that was the one of the cause for Krishna to come in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to release that love of gopis. Right, that was a reason for that. And then Krishna says that thus by achieving devotional service or pure devotional service, nothing else is remain to achieve. And few more things Krishna says here, that just as cold, fear, and darkness are eradicated for one who has approached the sacrificial fire, so the dullness, fear, and ignorance are destroyed from one engaged in service of devotees of the Lord. So serving to the devotees, serving to the Lord is actually transcendental. And foolishness is the wealth of impious, who place great value on their treasure and firmly make up their mind to remain in the darkness of ignorance. That's called as foolishness. And saintly devotees of the Lord are just like sun. By the light of their words, the living entities' eyes of knowledge are opened and the darkness of ignorance is destroyed. Now we chant this mantra, Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Salakya Chakshur Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. So that's why Guru is being bowed down, because he's opened by the torchlight of knowledge. He has actually taken away the darkness of ignorance. Or Krishna says here, the darkness of ignorance is being destroyed by the eyes of knowledge. So Krishna, the pure devotees of Lord, they opens our heart through the knowledge, through the eyes of knowledge, and then the darkness of ignorance goes away. Thus, Krishna concludes saying that the saintly devotees are one real friends and relatives. They are the proper recipients of service, not the gross material body. So, though in this body they are there, but it's being nicely said by acharyas that a Vaishnava never dies. So, though the Vaishnava they take this body just to deliver the other living entity, other fallen souls. So by the association of those, they get liberated, right? And hence, Krishna concluded say that thus, after losing the desire on the same planet as Urvashi, Maharaj Pururava, he began to wander on the earth, free from all material association and completely satisfied himself within the self, and went back to the spiritual world. So that's how we conclude today here, and we'll continue from chapter 27 coming Monday. And just a reminder, on Wednesday, I think on 12th, Suttapa Prabhu will be giving a class to us. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.